me to fill in for Bishop Reginald Jackson. I was thinking to myself, oh my God, why would he do something like that? But I think it's apropos, and I didn't know what I was going to say before I came before this august body, but then it came to me. And so this speech is apropos for this moment. But first and foremost, I would be remiss in my duties as the president of the Georgia State Conference if I didn't bring the greetings from our national chairman, Leon Russell, and our president and CEO, Derek Johnson, who no more than 23 hours ago I was with in Las Vegas, Nevada, as we were at the 115th National Convention for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And I must say, the convention was something to behold. Why do I say that? Because we had the first African-American governor of the state of Maryland, the third black governor ever elected in these United States. And then we had the honor and privilege of hearing from the President of the United States, Joe Biden. But much more than that, we heard from civil rights and social justice warriors from all over this country, and they were resolute in one charge. And that charge is, we are all in. I want to be clear. When the NAACP says they are all in on something, the ground shakes. The country moves. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you guys about, it came to me. What does it mean to be all in? All in. Well, I want to give you some dates in the history of this great association. The first date is March the 2nd, 1955. Now, you may ask, Gerald, what is the significance of March the 2nd, 1955? Well, I'll give you a hint. There was a 15-year-old Montgomery, Alabama high school student who, after watching one of her classmates be falsely accused of something, decided that she was going to do something. Now, she didn't do it for fame, she didn't do it for acclaim, she didn't even get recognized. But she decided to sit down on a Montgomery public bus and was arrested. Now, of course, most of y'all remember December the 1st, 1955. When another member of this venerable association, I believe she was a seamstress from Montgomery, she was the secretary of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP. Y'all might know her name. I think her name is Rosa Parks. I'm going to get to that in a minute. This young lady, this 15-year-old, was arrested. She was taken to jail. She was held. And she decided through her family to call a young lawyer, a 25-year-old lawyer. A 25-year-old lawyer who worked for the legal defense fund. His name was Fred Gray. Now you may ask, why, Mr. Griggs, are you telling me this? Again, 23 hours ago, I was with Leon Russell, I was with Derek Johnson, and now my first vice president sits in an airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, with that lawyer. That lawyer's name is Fred Gray. He is one of the most seminal lawyers in American history. He lives in Tuskegee, Alabama, to this day. I'm going to give you a little more information in a minute. Back to Claudette. So Claudette was arrested. She was taken to jail. She called Fred. Fred came down to the jail, got her out of jail. Mind you, this 25-year-old lawyer had just finished law school at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio. He had come back to Alabama with the sole purpose to destroy everything segregation. Now, his very first client was Claudette Colvin. His second client was Rosa Parks. So again, there was a incident that happened on December the 1st, 1955, which led to one of the biggest movements in the history of this country. When they arrested that seamstress, when they arrested that secretary of the Montgomery NAACP, a movement started. It started in the living room of Fred Gray and Joanne Robinson. They decided to create an organization called the Montgomery Improvement Association. Now you must ask yourself why they decided to create this organization. Well, they wanted an organization that would not be attacked, but could do some good and necessary trouble. So they decided with themselves and the president of the Montgomery NAACP, I believe his name is E.D. Nixon, and they convened and decided we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to get some flyers together. We go down to Alabama State, which is where Fred Gray went to undergrad, and we're going to print these flyers up, and we're going to pass them out around town. And we're going to say, we're going to stay off the bus for one day. Because y'all know, black people and our allies, it's hard to get black folks to do anything longer than one day. So, they decided to stay off the bus one day. Then it moved into 2 days. Then it moved into 3 days. Then it moved into 4 days, and ultimately, it lasted 381 days. Now, we all know in this country, they're starting to take black history out of the history books. So they told us a story about how the Montgomery bus boycott ended. Y'all remember the story? All of a sudden, magically, segregation went away. Right? That's the story they told us. But let me tell you the truth about what happened. Remember Claudette? Well, she and 3 others that had been arrested on Montgomery buses decided to sue the state of Alabama. And they sued the state of Alabama with the Legal Defense Fund under the leadership of Fred Gray, who's still at the airport in Las Vegas. And they sued them all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And in 1956, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling in Browder versus Gate, which outlawed segregation in public transportation in the state of Alabama. So, again, you might ask, Mr. Griggs, why are you telling me all this? Well, one, I'm telling you that when the association says they all in on something, they all in. All in. Now, this one is for the young folks, because I get this question all the time. Mr. Griggs, you telling us about what happened in 1955. Or you telling us about what happened in 1964. Or you tell us about what happened in 1968. So I'm going to bring it to y'all's time. You remember in the intro it said that I had led Georgia's largest civil rights demonstration. Yeah, that was back in 2017. But there's another date in NAACP history that lives in infamy in this state. And that would be February the 23rd, 2020. Now, how many of y'all know what happened on February the 23rd, 2020? Yep. There was a young jogger in Scintilla Shores, and he went down for a jog on Scintilla Drive. And when he was on a jog on Scintilla Drive, he went to an incomplete house where 5 to 6 other people had gone through that house. And as he was exiting the house, Travis and Gregory McMichael and William Roddy Bryant decided to chase him. They chased him down Scintilla Drive. They chased him on the cross street. They boxed him in, hit him with a truck, and shot him with a shotgun 3 times. Now, of course, we all didn't know about that until May of 2020. But there was a young preacher who happened to be the president of the Brunswick NAACP that received a phone call from one Marcus Aubrey. asking about a situation that happened in Centilla Shores. That date lives in infamy in Georgia. It also lives in infamy in the United States because, as I said before Ahmaud, we had the biggest protest in Georgia history. After Ahmaud, we had the biggest protest in American history. Y'all remember Freedom Summer 2020. Because it didn't start in Minneapolis. It didn't start in Louisville. It started in Brunswick because we were running with a young John. What did that lead to? It led to one of the biggest moments in Georgia history, which changed the course of American history. Because if you don't remember, I'll remind you, people were outside all summer long. They were protesting. They were demanding action. They were getting in good and necessary trouble. And then they decided to march on the ballot box. They marched on the ballot box so much that a certain individual got sent home. Yeah. That same individual gave a nice speech yesterday in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He started trying to talk about unity. And trust me, the association wants to be unified with everyone who wants to defend democracy. But trust and believe that if you are an opponent of democracy, the association will come for you. And so I bring this all full circle to say we are all in. All in. We are all in for November the 5th, the same way we were all in for November of 2020. The same way we were all in for January of 2021. Y'all remember? Before that was January the 6th, it was January the 5th. What happened January the 5th of 2021? Black folks marched on the ballot box and sent a black senator for the first time from the slave state, and a Jewish senator for the first time in this state's history. But they said there was widespread voter fraud. Black folks didn't vote. Couldn't have happened. So they had to change some laws. They changed SB 202, which we sued them, and we still are in litigation on that. They tried to change the districts. We sued them, and we're still in litigation on that. But I'll point out another historic thing that the association has done recently. You may remember our brothers and sisters over in Alabama. Allen versus Milligan carved out a new supermajority in Alabama. That was the Alabama State Conference. Again, we ain't no ways tied. But even before that, we weren't all in. We all in now. So again, what does that mean? That means that the same venerable association that fought lynchings, that fought the Klan, that fought certain political parties that were called the Dixiecrats, the same NAACP that mobilized voters to send the first African-American president to the White House, and the same NAACP that mobilized to send the first African-American as the vice president is still the association. But we're calling on you now. All of you. Because there's a reason why the election flows through Georgia. Let's be clear. We have delivered the last 3 presidents of the United States. One, by voting. Another, by not voting. And then another, by voting in astronomical numbers. And that is what we are going to do November the 5th. So the message that I bring to you this evening is I'm not talking about what we have done. I'm not talking about what our ancestors have done. I'm talking about what y'all have done and what we're going to do again. Because here's the thing, I'm a 6th generation Georgian, born out of this red clay. I'm the great-great-great-grandson of a slave. And I can only imagine what my ancestor is doing up there in that big, beautiful heaven looking down on us. Because we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. When we sing another great NAACP song, you know, the Black National Anthem, written by James Weldon Johnson, who was a member of the Atlanta branch of the NAACP during his time at Clark, Atlanta University, which is Clark College at that point. Or when we think about W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a professor at Clark, we're not talking about just the history of the association, we're talking about the history of Georgia. Or when we talk about a young preacher, going back to that December the 5th, 1955, because in that same meeting with Fred and Joanne and E.D. Nixon, they decided on something. We need a leader. We need a spokesperson. Well, I think we need a preacher. Well, we got about 3 preachers here in Montgomery, but we can't give them this position because they're going to fight over it. What about the new guy? The new guy from Atlanta. You know, that new guy that came from Ebenezer. That guy. What's his name? Martin. Well, let me give you a little history on Martin before we get to Montgomery. Martin came from Atlanta, Georgia. His father was an executive board member of the Atlanta NAACP. He was a member of the youth council of the Atlanta NAACP. So again, when we talk about the history of civil rights, you can't talk about the history of civil rights without talking about those 5 letters. So, if in 1955, we set the match that lit the spark that changed the course of American history, and in 2020, we lit the match that created the spark that changed American history, why can't we do it again in 2024? Now, we've heard a lot of news on all these news channels, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, the Weather Channel. But nobody reporting on what the black folks are doing. Nobody seems to think that black people can turn out to vote again. You know, I have hope in my people. The reason why I have hope in my people is because I've seen y'all do it before. I've seen black people move in unison like we do on the electric slide. I believe that regardless of the ban on line warming of 150 feet, or the removal of drop boxes, or the attempts at voter challenges, or local election takeovers like the one that happened, I believe, one county over. Y'all need to understand something. One, we got lawyers. We've had lawyers. I mean, we were the one that gave y'all the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Wasn't he a lawyer for the NAACP? Greg Walker? Yeah, I think he was. His name was Thurgood. Yeah. So, and then Georgia turned around and gave us the next black Supreme Court justice. You know, y'all hold y'all applause on that one. So it's all within our DNA. Like Kendrick Lamar says, there's royalty in DNA. Okay? Y'all just gotta recognize it. And we don't respond well to fear and division.
Right.
Listen, this association was created to fight the Klan. So whether they wear white hoods or khaki pants, it doesn't matter. Whether they burn crosses or tiki torches, it doesn't matter. Whether they have Hulk Hogan or anyone else, it doesn't matter. What matters is y'all better be concerned when the black folks convene. And I saw thousands upon thousands of black people convene in Las Vegas. What MSNBC and Fox News and the Weather Channel didn't report on this week was we had a bigger crowd than they had in Wisconsin. So I have a message for the politicians on both sides of the aisle. One already came to meet with the NAACP. The other one might want to come and have a conversation. Because regardless of whatever unifying message they try to spew, you still have 3 cases, one of which is in Georgia.
All right.
And one thing I know about law and order in Georgia, because I've been doing it for 20 years, if you're on the wrong side of law and order in Georgia, can't nobody save you. So the unifying message I have is a message of hope. It's a message of determination. It's a message from our ancestors. Don't let nobody turn you around. It's not we shall overcome.
All right.
It's we are overcoming. What our chairman said unequivocally from the stage and at the board meeting, we need 300,000 volunteers to knock doors, to phone bank, to text bank, to make sure they talk with their neighbor about the importance of this election. Because let's be clear, we're not going back to 1950, and we're not going back to 1850. So if a former slave by the name of Frederick Douglass could fight like heck for his freedom, or the son of a slave could fight for our freedom, or the great-great-grandson of a slave can continue to fight for our freedom, we don't have anything to be worried about. So I'm honored to be here with you guys, but make no mistake about it. Georgia is going to make history again. Black people and our allies will save the democracy. Now, what does that look like? That looks like us mobilizing like we've done before. That looks like us having difficult and uncomfortable conversations with folks who don't agree with us. That looks like making sure that the Constitution applies to everybody. Most importantly, that looks like everyone within the sound of my voice being a member of the NAACP. Because there's only one association that's been through this before. We done been through it about 4 times. We know how to organize. We know how to strategize. We know how to do 3 things very well. One is to advocate. That means the marching, the protesting, some of y'all going to jail. I didn't start. Now, we know how to litigate, which means I'm coming to get y'all out of the jail. Okay? And then we gonna sue, and we gonna win. And then 3 is to legislate. We have to have a conversation with our elected officials. And I love our elected officials, most of them. But they need to understand something. They work for us. And there's a job interview going on right now. It's not a coronation. It's a job interview. And when I hear a speech that's an hour and 30 minutes long about you and a job interview, I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear about what you're going to do for me. So here's what we have to do. We have to have a conversation with all Americans and remind them that the Constitution says, we the people. It didn't say some people, the people who came over here on ships of their own accord, or the people who want to be citizens, but we don't believe they came the right way. It doesn't say any of that. It says, we the people, in order to make a more perfect union, do establish what? These laws. It also says that nobody's above the law. I might have to say that again for people. Nobody is above the law. And so what we have to do is remind ourselves, remind our elected officials, remind our neighbors that we are not the enemy. You cannot be a patriot and try to overthrow the government. You know, in 2020, I marched a whole lot. I mean, I marched so much that I have new shoes. I marched so much. But at no point did we try to go into a building with a Confederate flag and smear feces on the walls and try to light stuff on fire. You know what would have happened if that had happened during my protest? I wouldn't be here. Because they had the National Guard on us. They had the police and riot gear. They had all the tear gas. They had all kinds of stuff for people marching around with signs. We had signs. We didn't have bear mace, zip ties, shields. And again, we all saw this, right? Y'all saw it. We saw it in live stream. I know people trying to rewrite history. We saw it. So what we have to do is remind our good neighbors, the ones that say they are patriots, that in America, you can have a revolution once every 2 years for Congress, the House of Representatives, and once every 4 years, or 6 years if you have senators, and then of course for the President of the United States once every 4 years. It's at the ballot box. It's called voting. And so we are going to do the most American of American things, and that's mobilize. That's make sure our elected officials understand how important it is for the next generation to have just as many rights as the last generation. Because I'll say this and I'm going to close. I was born in 1978. So I'm 46 years old. I was the first person in my family born with all my rights. Thanks to Thurgood, thanks to Fred Gray, thanks to Dr. King and Rose and so many others. And we love them for that. But I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I have a 2-month-old son. I don't want to be the last person in my family born with all my rights. Because in this state and others, after the Dobbs decision, my daughter has less rights than her mother. Let that sink in for a moment. All it takes for injustice to flourish is what? For good men and women to do nothing. Y'all, Dr. King has some quotes now. He has some quotes. But the question you have to ask yourself is, does the quote apply to you? Everybody says what they would have done during the American Revolution, what they would have done during the Civil War, what they would have done during the Civil Rights Movement. You don't recognize the time you're in right now? Is this not a movement happening right now? Are they not demonizing the protesters? Are they not saying that the First Amendment only applies to certain people? And we all know the Second Amendment, it only applies to a certain group of people. So, do me a favor, join the movement by doing three things. One, everybody should be a card-carrying member of the NAACP. Because we still have some 30s. We still have some Fred Grays. We still change the course of American history. Number two, everybody should be a registered and active voter. And number three, if we are truly all in, you will take this as a wake-up call. This is a 2-minute warning. This is that moment when you recognize, what am I going to do? Not because of what my ancestors did, but because my descendants are going to look back to this day and say, what did daddy, mom, granddaddy, and grandma, and all the rest of my family members do when they came to take my rights? Did they sit back and say, oh man, it don't apply to me, you know, stuff don't ever change, you know, it is what it is? Or did they say they were all in? Did they say they were all in? All in. Did they say they were all in? All in. So like Chairman Russell said, if you are really all in, then volunteer. Let's go knock some doors. Let's turn out this vote. Thank you.